Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Two for Roughing by Lasairiona Mcmaster, narrated by Sophie Daniels and Christopher Anthony. Prologue. Molly, 16 years old, 5 years earlier. To surviving another year of high school. Molly raised the can of Fanta in her favorite zero-shits-given koozie she'd stolen from her mom and crashed it against her best friend Savannah's hand. "We survived? I feel like an extra on The Walking Dead right now." Savannah smothered a yawn with her free hand. "But don't ask me to do any walking, 'cause no." The two girls were sprawled out on sun loungers in Molly's backyard next to the pool. It was the first day of summer, and their plans consisted of doing the bare minimum, working on their tans, and consuming candy faster than their parents could provide it. Savannah slipped from her can, burped, giggled, and leaned back against the semi-reclined chair. Her waist-long blonde hair was twisted into a messy bun on top of her head. Reaching into the picnic-sized cooler next to her, Molly grabbed a handful of ice and ran it over her bare chest and neck. A sigh escaped her at the cool relief from the fierce overhead sun. "You kids have sunscreen on?" Molly's mom peeked around the back door of the house, always the mother hen. "Yes, Mrs. Morrison." "Good. I'd rather not start summer vacation with sun blisters and sunstroke. Will's on his way home, Moll. We'll start lunch when he gets back." "Sounds good, Mom." "Want to swim before lunch?" Savannah was already shucking her Daisy Dukes to the ground and pulling off her tank top to reveal a bright yellow bikini. "Go ahead. I'll wait till after lunch." Molly pulled her shades from on top of her head and slipped them over her eyes before raking her long, frizzy brown hair off her sweaty neck and into a high ponytail. The usual humidity wasn't doing much for her cascading waves. She peeled her short shorts off and dropped them over her phone on the hot ground next to her chair. "Wake up, sleepyhead." Savannah sprayed her with a welcome dose of cool water from the pool as she climbed out and made her way back to her chair. "Girl, you were out cold. Snoring, drool, the lot. Pretty sure you farted in your sleep, too." "Saviana, we both know my farts smell like gummy bears, so that stink must be coming from you." The gate to the backyard opened, and Molly's big brother, by only 10 months, but he never let her forget it, made his way into the backyard, sweat-drenched shirt clinging to his body. "Mom, do we have time for a dip before we eat?" He was already kicking off his flip-flops and unbuttoning his shorts before their mom answered, "10 minutes," through the open window. Molly was only vaguely paying attention to her brother because he'd brought a friend, a guy she'd never seen before. His red hair shone in the sunlight. It was shaved on the sides, but longer and styled with gel on top. His faded gray Minnesota snow pirate shirt stretched across broad shoulders and had dark rings of sweat around his neck and underarms. Will had wanted to be a snow pirate since he learned what hockey was. If she was a betting woman, she'd put money on him striking up a conversation with the stranger over his shirt. Something cold against her thigh caused her to gasp and jump. "You're staring." Savannah's voice was quiet and close. She pulled her can away, tucking it back into its foam sleeve. "You can't see where my eyes are behind these shades," Molly hissed, throwing the comment back to Savannah. But she didn't divert her gaze. Savannah leaned closer. "Yes, but your chest stopped moving, so I needed to check you were still alive." A braying laugh escaped Molly's mouth before she could clamp it shut. Whoever he was now standing in nothing but a pair of swim shorts, poised to jump in the pool. He hesitated, and his eyes tracked to the sound of her ridiculous laugh. He was staring right at her. Her body temperature seemed to have shot up 10 degrees. His stare was piercing, intense, and had her wishing she was already in the pool so she had an excuse to be closer to him. You getting in? Will splashed his friend from below. The new guy leaped into the air, folded his body, tucked his legs against his chest, spun and landed in the pool with the precision of an Olympic diver. Idly dragging a thumb against her bottom lip, she willed herself to look away from the boys play wrestling in the pool. She'd never been attracted to any of her brother's friends before. From an early age, they'd set up ground rules. She wouldn't mess around with any of his friends, and he would afford her the same courtesy. With any luck, this guy was only in town for the summer. Maybe he could be her summer fling, and Will wouldn't mind. Something about him pulled her towards him. He was still staring, throwing heated looks her way when Will's attention was elsewhere. He somehow managed to suck the oxygen from the space, despite the fact they were outside. "Lunch is ready!" Molly didn't move at her mom's call. She was struck by an unusual barb of self-consciousness, and didn't want whoever he was to see her body as she stood to put her shorts on. The boys got out of the pool, grabbed towels from the towel box, and dried off. New guy followed Will towards the house, pausing before he entered. He cast her a wicked grin that had her girl parts reacting in ways they'd never reacted before. Body tingling from top to toe, she stood on shaking legs and pulled her shorts on. Her chest was tight, her mouth dry, and her head light. Had she breathed at all in the last 10 minutes? She'd always been the one to ridicule all the lip-biting, sighing, and furtive glances she'd seen on TV or read about in books. That shit never happened in real life. Except her brother had just brought home the most delicious man she'd ever seen, and she'd swooned so hard she'd stopped breathing. Please let him be here just for summer. Will's voice permeated the air as Molly and Savannah walked toward the house. Mom, this is Finn. He moved in down the street about a month ago. We're going to be pirates together in college.
Finnegan, 17 years old, 5 years earlier. This watermelon salad is delicious, Mrs. Morrison. I don't even know what half of these ingredients are, but... Finn shoveled another heaped forkful of what he'd hoped was watermelon salad into his mouth to stop his babbling, and made a satisfied sound. With a little luck, a localized earthquake would strike right under his feet and suck him into the depths of the earth. It's watermelon, cucumber, feta, red onion, mint with olive oil and some balsamic vinegar. Will's sister was the one who answered. Although she hadn't met his eyes since she'd come into the house, her gaze had scorched him from the moment he'd arrived in the yard. Worse still, he'd been drawn to her, too. Her long dark hair was tied high on her head, allowing the sharp edges of her high cheekbones, jaw, and nose to stand out on her pale skin. He couldn't see her eyes behind the shades, probably a blessing. If he had, he'd likely have come in Will's pool. Finn had moved to town just over a month ago. Will had found him playing street hockey in the cul-de-sac at the end of their street and asked to join in, making small talk over Finn's snow pirate shirt. Their brolationship had started almost right away. Turned out they were in the same class at school, and when they weren't in class together, they were playing hockey together. One of the first things Will had said to Finn was that his little sister was off limits. At the time, Finn had nodded his agreement. Younger sisters weren't cool. They were often clingy, needy, and desperate to hang out with the cool kids. Finn had no plans to date his new bestie's little sister. But what Will had neglected to mention, however, was she wasn't so little. And as Finn stood fighting every urge to reach out and stroke her collarbone, he'd realized he'd gotten it all wrong. She was most definitely the cool kid. He was desperate to hang out with her, and he'd already screwed himself over by giving his word he'd never touch her. Mercifully, the girls didn't linger. They piled their plates high with food and went back outside. When the door swung closed behind her, a sadness settled in his stomach. The excitement and electricity thrumming through the room left with her. He wanted to know everything there was to know about her. He wanted to make her laugh again, just so he could hear the obnoxious noise that delighted him the first time. She gave off an air of not giving a shit, and he was here for it. The brunette was Molly. Will scooped a mouthful of pasta salad into his mouth, chewed and swallowed, in case you couldn't tell. Finn's mouth dried up, and the watermelon salad suddenly felt like grains of sand against his tongue. He swallowed hard. "She's your only sister, right?" Will snorted. "Yeah, I couldn't handle another Molly. Let's take our plates outside." He'd barely met the woman, and her orbit was already dragging him into torment and temptation. Could he sit across the yard from her and eat lunch as though he didn't want to lose himself kissing her? Food lodged in his throat and he coughed. "I should probably go home." Confusion tugged Will's brows together. After we eat? Had Finn eaten something he was allergic to? His tongue was thick and heavy, and words seemed to evade him, so he settled for a nod. Was this what love at first sight felt like? He shook his head. That was the thing of fairy tales and Disney movies. Maybe he'd eaten too much watermelon salad and it was a case of indigestion. "Which is it?" "Huh?" You nodded, then shook your head. "Going or staying? I figured we could hang out in the pool for a while. Maybe play some video games before practice." "Sure." His traitorous legs dragged him out of the house behind Will, passing Molly and her friend on their way. He stumbled over his own feet. Perhaps that was wishful thinking. Perhaps he'd tripped over the not-so-thin air that hung between them, charged with secretive glances and an inability to stop staring at his friend's sister. It was going to be a long summer. Finnegan, 17 years old, 8 weeks later. The unmistakable crunch of bone on bone rang out in the field as Finn's curled-up fist connected with his opponent's jaw. No one made Molly Morrison cry on his watch. Her mascara-smudged cheeks, red-rimmed, sad eyes, and quiet demeanor would be etched in his soul for as long as he lived. Her new boyfriend had cheated on her after only a month of dating with someone she knew from school. She'd walked into Chili's with her family for dinner and witnessed the two of them canoodling in a booth in the middle of the restaurant, not even attempting to hide their infidelity from public view. She hadn't stayed around. Breaking up with him at full volume, spine straight, shoulders squared, she looked like a fierce goddess, shooting daggers from her ferocious green eyes and spitting fire from her lips. Mrs. Morrison had sent Finn and Will after her while she placed a to-go order for dinner, and the striking gladiator deflated in front of his eyes when they caught up to her. He wanted to swoop her into his arms and dry her tears, to tell her that asshole ex of hers didn't deserve her time. He wanted to press her against his chest and tell her his heart beat only for her, and his very being burned with need to keep her safe forever. But he couldn't. So, instead, he was laying into one of his teammates under the guise of being like a big brother to her, pretending he didn't want Will to sully his squeaky clean reputation or get dragged into a fight he might not win. He'd thrown the first punch. With each swing, he tried to convince himself it was the truth. But under it all, he was a goner for Molly Morrison and had no idea how the fuck he was going to handle it when she found herself a new man.
Chapter 1. Molly. Get him! Hit him with the stick! Kill him! Molly groaned into the fist she had crammed into her mouth. Fucking newbies. What was that? I couldn't make it out around those white knuckles you're gnawing on. Cleo's face contorted, probably in an attempt to school her face into a serious expression, but her body shook with silent giggles. Why doesn't he just clock him with the stick? A group of male college students sat in the row in front of Molly and Cleo in the Snow Pirates' home arena. Either the guys had taken a wrong turn on the way to the football field, or this was their first ever hockey game. From the looks of things, it might have even been their first time in public. Because that's aggravated assault. Molly didn't take her eyes off the play while she answered, but her voice sounded every bit as unamused as she felt. Two of the men twisted in their seats to look at her, eyebrows raised. Hitting someone with a potentially dangerous weapon? You ever been hit by a hockey stick? Those suckers can do some serious damage. Sure, there's fighting in hockey, but they don't abandon the rule of law at the edge of the ice. It was rarely so severe, as hockey players lacked the intent to harm, but that didn't mean she couldn't mess with the newbies just a little. One of the guys nodded, as if that made perfect sense. The Snow Pirates were only 10 minutes into the first period, and Molly was already done with the inane chatter and commentary coming from the guys in front. The newbies had shown up to the game without so much as a trace of Snow Pirates' colors between them. One of them even dared to wear green, the color of the other team, the Cedar Rapids Raccoons. He either didn't know or flat out didn't care. If she didn't think it could be construed as wanting to get the man naked, she'd have demanded he remove the offending color until the game was over. Sure, she was overreacting. Every hockey fan had to start somewhere. Not everyone was born with her innate desire to watch a group of peak performance athletes chase a 3-inch disc of rubber around a rink on ice skates. She should probably be kinder to those who got there eventually, even if they didn't know anything about anything and didn't give a shit who heard. If she was being honest with herself, her irritation was less to do with the guys in front of her not knowing which way was up when it came to hockey, and more to do with Finn O'Brien. The 6'2" left-winger crouched low in the face-off circle, still towered over his opponent. His delicious bubble butt pointed right at her. Desire coated her throat like thick honey on a spoon. She shook her head to clear the shameless thoughts. She had no business lusting over her brother's best friend. There were lines that couldn't be crossed, and unfortunately for her, the man who held every ounce of her heart was so very, very offside. He was also the dumbass who had promised her brother that he'd never lay a finger on her. Ever. A finger wasn't all she wanted him to lay on her. She licked her lips. What the hell was wrong with her? Okay, fine. It had been a couple days since she'd last gotten laid, but she'd sure as shit gotten off before she left for the game. No matter how tired or busy she was, she needed her game day every bit as much as Finn needed to tape his stick with military precision, or Will needed his game day nap, or Austin and Seb needed to kick their soccer ball around the hall. It was her game day routine, and game day routines weren't to be fucked with. Maybe if she focused on Finn's opponent's ass instead, the flickering embers of need pulsing low in her belly would stop dragging her attention to Finn's butt, his thighs, and his delicious broad shoulders. Slater Goodwin's smaller frame was less impressive, his backside too. No matter how much she willed her eyes to stay focused on Slater's ass, it was as though Finn had magnets stuck to his butt cheeks, and the corresponding magnets in her pupils couldn't fight the pull. So what if his thighs were so thick he could probably crush a watermelon without breaking a sweat? Those thighs were not destined to nestle between her own. Fuck. She clenched her thighs together, smacking her pen off her notebook with increasing aggression, as the buzzer sounded, noting an infraction on the ice. What the hell had happened? She'd been so distracted by the idea of her legs curled around Finn's waist that she'd missed a call. She never missed calls. Shit. Tyler Lawson, 2 minutes for cross-checking. Thank you, Mr. Announcer Man. Molly scribbled on her notebook as she watched the replay on the big screen. The raccoon in question did indeed cross-check her brother against the boards. One of the guys in the row in front elbowed the dude wearing Cedar Rapids green. What the fuck is cross-checking? Green dude shrugged. Fuck if I know. Google it. With an eye roll that almost sprained her retinas, Molly sighed. There was zero hope for this bunch. Cross-checking was the easiest of all the penalties to spot due to the distinctive shoving with the stick action. She needed to speak up and help the poor beings before it all got too much for them. She cleared her throat. It's when a player uses the shaft of his stick to hit an opponent. One of them smothered a snicker behind his hand as the others turned to face her. Shaft? It turned out that green dude not only had no clue about team colors, but also had the sense of humor of a prepubescent boy. Ignoring his bait, she nodded and jammed her pen into her ponytail. The player holds the stick like this, one hand at the top, the other about halfway down, and does a pushing motion with it into the opposing player. 5 mouths hung open as the boy stared at her. She shook her head. The dude in the penalty box hit the other dude with his stick, and that's no bueno, so he got sent to timeout to think about what he's done. Leo's body vibrated next to her. I think they get it. Molly wasn't so sure. Her eyes followed the puck. Being nice to new people was one thing. Missing a potential power play goal was an entirely different matter. Hockey was a turn-on-a-dime kind of sport. If you took your eye off the play for even a fraction of a second, or caught yourself daydreaming about a certain red-headed player's thighs wrapped around your body, you could come back to a different game altogether. The crowd went wild when the commentator announced the Minnesota power play. What's a power play? Did we score? One of the men produced his phone from his pocket and pulled up Google. After a few clicks, he read aloud, A power play is a situation in which a team has an advantage on the ice while one or more players of the opposing team is serving a penalty. So they're all cheering because we have one more dude on the ice than the other team for 2 minutes? Points for Green Dude. In his defense, he seemed as though he was genuinely interested in the game and trying to understand how it worked. On the ice, defenseman Lincoln Scott sailed the puck to Finn, who grinned and passed it forward to Will. Her stomach flipped. This particular combination of players were proving to be unstoppable. Finn and Will had played together since they'd met as teenagers. They knew each other's strengths, weaknesses, and habits. Molly had always wanted to blindfold the pair, to see if it made an impact on the game. She doubted it would. If Will was on the ice, Finn had a way of finding him. She got it. She and Cleo were ride-or-die close as well. But something about the boys had clicked from day one, and it was a bond she'd never dare mess with. From the moment they'd met, they'd all but imprinted on each other, like some kind of fated bromance. She often joked they were like Parabatai, Nephilim warriors who fought together as lifelong partners, bound together by oath. Being hockey players, and having roughed each other up playing street hockey as much as the two men had, they were probably bound together by blood as well. She had no doubt they'd willingly lay down their lives for one another. While they didn't have matching rune tattoos like Jace and Alec from her favorite guilty pleasure TV series Shadowhunters, the guys were tight AF. Bros before hoes was a common phrase tossed about by guys, but bros before sisters was an even stricter moral code. Will passed the puck to Finn, who sailed it back to Will. Molly leaned forward in her seat, a chill of anticipation running up her spine. She'd seen this play 1,000 times before. And while Cedar Rapids had a solid wall of a goaltender, the combined speed, agility, and sheer determination of Minnesota's top line was impressive. Glove side. Her announcement came a split second before Will shot the puck at the goalie's glove side, and the netminder grabbed at it just a fraction too late. She grinned and wrote the goal in her notebook, taking great care not to write something about how delectable Finn's ass looked as he assisted. "How'd you know?" Cleo shivered, rubbing her biceps with her palms. While Cleo was dating one of the players, Greek god extraordinaire Lincoln Scott, she was still learning the subtleties of the game and the nuances of the players on the team. Molly couldn't help but smile. It ain't my first rodeo. The novelty of Cleo attending hockey games of her own free will, now that she was dating Lincoln, hadn't worn off for Molly. She didn't care how many questions her best friend asked, as long as she didn't grumble and moan every time Molly wanted to go to a game. 3 heads turned to face her from the row in front. "Do you play?" Green Dude pursed his lips. She snorted. "No. I write for the school paper, so I watch a lot of hockey. And number 82 is my brother. I know his playbook." Green Dude's eyebrow arched and he nodded. "Want to come down here?" He patted his thigh. "And help me learn the rules?" His eyes sparkled with mischief. "Nice try, Green Dude, but you couldn't handle me." She picked up her soda, took a big slurp, and placed it back on the floor next to her feet. He flicked his gaze to his shirt and smirked. "Max, and don't be so quick to judge, pretty girl. We might be a match made in heaven." "Oh, Max, I judged you the second you wore Cedar Rapids green in my barn." One of the other guys snickered. "Also, you're not my type." "What is your type?" "Finn O'Brien." Max's friend eyed her, as though he was thinking about throwing his hat in the ring. "Nope." Her headshake was emphatic. "Ouch! Want some ice for that burn, Hardy?" Random man number 3 gave his friend a noogie. "You realize there's a game happening down there, right?" Molly pointed to the ice with a cursory glance at the 5 amigos. "We're actually a pretty good team." "It's too fast. I can't keep up." Random man number 4's grumble was almost inaudible over the wave of boos rippling around the arena. Molly was on her feet, flailing a hand at the ice. "Hey, ref! Maybe if you sucked a little less on the whistle, you'd blow it right." She plopped onto her seat. "Fucking Iowa." "Okay, Iowa's like the least offensive state in the United States. That doesn't work. Fucking Florida? That works. Fucking Alabama? Also acceptable. But Iowa? What has Iowa ever done to you, other than give you beans and corn?" Max was quickly falling out of favor. Not that he was ever really in favor. Molly narrowed her eyes. Cleo grabbed her hand and squeezed. "Murder is bad, Moll." Another ripple of boos erupted around the rink as the Raccoons bagged a power play goal of their own. "Motherfuck." "She knows it's only the first quarter, right?" Max spoke to Cleo, but jerked a thumb in Molly's direction. Molly rolled her lips between her teeth, but still managed to speak before Cleo opened her mouth. "It's a period, not a quarter. And yes, I'm aware we're still in the first period, but this is dumb as shit." One of the guys brayed out a laugh. Was he seriously laughing at the word period? She couldn't fathom a grown-ass man still snickering. But so many people cringed at the word moist, she supposed anything was possible. Moist. Her absolute favorite word in the entire dictionary. Used to describe that feeling between your thighs when you think about fucking Finn O'Brien. She shook her head. But it did little to dislodge the thought as Finn threw his leg over the bench to take to the ice. What I wouldn't give to have him throw his leg over. Come on, Opie! A fan.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?